Well, good morning, everyone. We are live on January 30th, 2025. We are going to be simulcasting Kash Patel's confirmation hearing. We are waiting for Alex to join us and possibly Ronnie. So, let's see, there we go.
Assistant Special Agent.
Good morning, Alex.
In charge.
Hey, Sam.
Was a key official involved in opening the elector case that became the John.
Can you hear the audio okay, Sam?
Yeah, it sounds good so far.
Operation. That's not supposed to happen. An official.
Does my head look like it's cut off to you, Alex?
Isn't supposed to open cases.
Say that again, Sam. I gotta fix the audio. You're coming through a different set of speakers.
Does my head look cut off in the video to you?
Yeah. Try to touch your camera up about an inch or so.
Oh, I don't know if I can on this one. Hold on.
Lower your chair.
Well, I've got a.
Noted that Richard Pilger, who ran the Justice Department's election crime branch, was involved in the approval. Now I'd like to call the committee's attention to something I'm going to share with you, information about the FBI's that's never been made public before. Do you have those?
I don't know why your audio.
I'm sorry.
It's not coming through my headphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're coming through my speakers in the room, which is going to create an echo for your listeners. And the audio for the rest of everything else is coming through my headphones. So I got to figure out why.
14th.
Why is Sam in the room with me?
He said, quote, here's a draft.
That's all right. I'll figure it out.
We discussed.
But continue on.
Okay.
The draft.
So everybody on TikTok, double tap that screen, share this live out to everybody you can. If you're on YouTube, Rumble, or X, do the same. We're going to be somewhat quiet during this so that people can hear what's going on at the confirmation hearing. This is the confirmation hearing with Kash Patel.
In the U.S. Attorney's Office for the T District of Columbia, saying, quote, I had a discussion with the case team, and we believe there is predication to include former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, as a predicated subject, end quote. This FBI case would later be codenamed Arctic Frost.
Alex, is there any way to get the feed onto the restream?
Email. T-Ball.
We can try. If you want to email me the guest invite for Restream,
approval will be sought to open the case. The fourth email, February 25th, 2022.
You want to email or text?
Saying they
email, please.
Okay.
And others as a criminal subject to the case. T-Ball responded, quote unquote, perfect. The fifth email, March 22, 2022, from Tebow, emailing a version of an investigative opening for approval. This didn't include President Trump. I want to make clear, that one didn't include President Trump as a criminal subject. The sixth email is on April 11th, 2022, from Tebow, approving the opening of Arctic.
I want everybody to know that I believe Chuck Grassley is one of the good guys.
Is an April 13th, 2022 email from FBI agent to Tebow stating that the FBI deputy director approved its opening. The eighth email on the same date had Tebow emailing John Crabb that the elector case was approved. Crabb responded, quote, thanks a lot. Let's talk next week, end quote. Between March 22nd and April 13th, other versions of the document opening the investigation existed because a ninth email shows that the FBI General Counsel Office made edits on March 25th. Was Trump still removed as an
If you're on
investigative
TikTok,
subject?
double tap that
If
screen
so,
and let's
which
share this live out to as many as we can.
FBI officials other than Jack Smith later added him for prosecution. I expect the production of all records on this matter to better understand the full fact pattern and whether other records exist. Notably, approval of these documents was also given by Richard Pilger. This committee has written about Pilger undermining the Justice Department's efforts during the 2020 election for partisan purposes. These emails and documents substantiate my July.
I think, Sam, if I fire up the restream, we're going to end up back in the echo situation that we ran into last time. So maybe for this round, just ask your viewers on the other platforms to maybe come over to TikTok for this particular stream. I don't know.
Okay.
Criminal investigation.
If you're watching this on YouTube, Rumble, or X, if you can get over to TikTok, my username is Sam_Shalhoub. Come join us over there. We're having trouble getting the feed onto the other platforms.
Just like they did with Crossfire Hurricane. They have yet to learn a lesson. I hope you'll learn that lesson. And their conduct, yet again, seriously eroded integrity of this once storied institution. As I've said before, if a politically charged investigation is to be open, it must be done the right way. And that didn't happen here. Mr. Patel, in my time, I've never seen our law enforcement intelligence community institution so badly infected with political decision making. And I say intelligence community because you know what happened when 55 people, former or present intelligence agencies, signed a letter in 2020 that the laptop was a Russian hoax.
And they lost their clearance for it too.
Yes,
so all of
exactly.
This is
52 of them.
Institutions breaking faith with we the people. Mr. Patel.
People were asking how old is Kash Patel? He's 32 years old.
But you must be aggressive.
Unless you're asking about Grassley.
Grassley is 91.
Accountability. And transparency brings accountability. Should you do so, you'll have my support. And remember, either you're going to run your agency or the agency's going to run you.
Kash Patel's 44, yep.
They ended up running Director Ray and probably people before him. Without objection, I'm going to put in this letter in the record, and this letter is sent to Director Ray December the 9th last year, calling for him and his deputies to step down, and it's titled, quote unquote, failures. Now, I turn to Ray, member Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your commitment
Christina
to the
Dina
Judiciary
said
Committee's
that
longstanding
he's sharp
bipartisan
for his
practice
age. Yes,
of
he
vetting
is.
presidential nominees.
I hope to be half that sharp at 91.
The FBI dates back to the start of the last century, 1908.
Morning, Ashley. Welcome in,
Charles
Liquid.
Bonaparte organized a special.
Thanks for the taps, guys, and shares.
J. Edgar Hoover became director of the FBI in 1924 and led the Bureau for 48 years until his death in 1972. He is credited with professionalizing the Bureau and developing its investigative ability. However, with little or no oversight, Hoover also used the Bureau's investigative
Everybody on
powers.
TikTok, double tap that screen and share this live out to everyone you can. We do have a live goal set up today. If you can contribute, great.
Thurgood Marshall and other civil rights leaders of the day.
Michelle wants to know why it's not on TV.
1975, the United
I think it's
States
on
Senate
C-SPAN, right?
It is on C-SPAN. I'm streaming from C-SPAN on the internet, but it is on C-SPAN if you have that on your cable network.
Other U.S. intelligence agencies. The Church Committee concluded these agencies had engaged in illegal surveillance, and as a result, quote, groups and individuals have been assaulted.
Did you see any details on that plane helicopter crash?
Disrupted because of their
Um,
views.
I watched the brief this morning.
Lifestyles.
I mean,
Quote,
the airline was within its trajectory. The helicopter was within its trajectory. A naval pilot came on and talked about the helicopter. I don't know. It's just a freak accident. The figure skaters being on there, that's a tragedy. The whole thing's a tragedy. But nothing that tickles my spidey senses yet, you know?
Well, I'm going to read you something. Somebody's saying I'm getting an echo when I speak.
Yeah, because, here, let me turn my mic off. Go ahead.
It'll be a minute before I've got to pull it up
And
first.
critically, we made the FBI director's appointment subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. That's why we're here today. Since 1935, the motto of the FBI has been fidelity, bravery, integrity. These qualities represent the Bureau's core values and the high standards that are expected of all of its employees, including the director of the FBI. After meeting with Mr. Patel, Mr. Patel has the experience, the temperament, the judgment to lead an agency of 38,000 agencies and 400 field offices around the globe. During the time I've served on this committee, I've had the opportunity to consider 4 FBI director nominations. Each one was a Republican.
Oh, Dick Durbin, here we go, folks.
My concerns about the director of the FBI are not partisan.
So here's an interesting tidbit on that flight problem.
Attorney General Garland.
So, and this is from Absolute 1776. So an American eagle, in quotations, traveling from Kansas crashes in D.C. Chiefs versus Eagles. It was landing on runway 33. Meanwhile, the Eagles put out a weird tweet with a helicopter 3 days ago. And ESPN put out an article telling us how safe the Super Bowl will be next week. Interesting coincidence.
Conspiracy theories that threaten and theories that threaten.
We'll see. No such thing as coincidence, eh, Sam?
Exactly.
Mr. Patel's theories, his beliefs, what motivates him, what he really believes. He wrote it in a book. This book, Government Gangsters, I urge all of you to read before you cast a vote for this gentleman. Mr. Patel has published it.
Oh, yeah, you should read Government Gangsters.
Yeah, I can't believe they brought that up. That's fantastic.
State 60. This list includes many distinguished public servants who've dedicated their lives to our nation. Among them are Democrats and Republicans, including former Trump administration officials.
Brown Hornet 43 said, doesn't matter what they say or do, all the nominees will pass, even
Then
if
there
the
is
three
Mr.
Republicans
Patel's
say no.
plan to quote, and I quote him.
He could do special nominations and don't have to go through all this, but
Right.
let's get it all out in the air for people to chew on a little bit.
Absolutely.
Morning,
I
Bear.
agree.
G, how are you?
After people in the media. We're going to come after you.
I'll need your mod powers so I don't get
on notice.
axed again like I did for the inauguration over BS.
Do I need to do something on my TikTok?
Not to me.
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to do something on my TikTok, you mean?
No, sir. No, you're fine. I've got a mod in my room that just showed up.
Okay. Or doesn't agree with him. Don't take it from me. Listen to these Republicans who worked with him during the Trump's first administration. Attorney General Bill Barr, and I quote, I categorically oppose making Patel deputy FBI director. I said it would happen over my dead body. Patel had virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. National Security Advisor John Bolton. I didn't think he was qualified. He demonstrated no policy aptitude at all.
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee. I can't listen to Dick Durbin. I'll be right back.
Okay.
President Trump's Deputy National Security Advisor, Charles Kupperman. The idea that Kash Patel is going to be the FBI director is appalling. His legal career is modest at best. His ideas are ludicrous. CI Director Gina Haspel threatened to resign after President Trump proposed making Mr. Patel CIA Deputy Director. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Mr. Patel lied about whether Nigeria had approved a hostage rescue operation, putting American lives at risk. But Mr. Patel would have us believe that all of these public servants, all Republicans, all from the first Trump administration, and apparently anyone else who's critical of him, are nothing but government gangsters and deep state members. Many of them have made his list of enemies. Just this week, CNN reported that during the Trump administration, CIA officials referred Mr. Patel to the Justice Department for criminal investigation for sharing classified information without authorization. Last week, I asked the Justice Department and intelligence community for information on any criminal referrals relating to misconduct by Mr. Patel. I have yet to receive a response. Mr. Patel's record is clear. He traffics in debunked conspiracy theories that serve or benefit his political beliefs.
Oh my God.
With January 6th, and he dedicates a whole chapter in this book on January 6th.
Oh, let's go there.
Each and every one of us, as witnesses to January 6th, have our own view of.
I bet you do.
I'll be grateful.
How many FBI were there that day?
Who risked their lives defending me, members of Congress, and visitors to the United States Capitol on that day. Mr. Patel posted on social media, quote, January 6th, never an insurrection. Cowards in uniform exposed. End of quote. Let me repeat that. Cowards in uniform exposed. Who was in the Capitol building on January 6th in a uniform? The Capitol Police were. Do you think they were cowards? Many of them risked their lives and some gave their lives in defense of this building. How about the D.C. police who were here as well? They were
fake news. Fake news.
Risking their lives as well. Some of them being battered and beaten by these mobsters that came into the Capitol. And Mr. Patel claims that the FBI agency aspires to lead, get this now, was planning January 6th for a year. He says the FBI was planning January 6th for a year. That's a quote. Mr. Patel has gone so far as to co-produce and sell musical recordings of a song performed by January 6 rioters in jail. Rioters who violently assaulted police officers. He has described this January 6 choir as, quote, political prisoners. Political prisoners.
That's right.
At least 6 members pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement officers on January 6th. All 6 have now been pardoned by President Trump. Here are some of those people who received blanket clemency by President Trump on his first day in office in the second term. Julian Cater assaulted Capitol police officers with pepper spray, incapacitating 3 officers. Ryan Nichols sprayed pepper spray on multiple police officers. After the attack, Nichols posted on Facebook, and I quote, "So yes, I'm calling for violence and I will be violent."
How many were feds?
Jordan Mink struck officers, quote, aggressively with a long pole. He spat at officers and threw large items at them.
Antifa. So, how long are they going to keep up this narrative?
Out of the way.
It's all right, because most of it's been debunked anyway.
After breaching the Capitol, James McGrew struck an officer and lunged for his baton. McGrew also threw a wooden handrail with metal.
So isn't this supposed to be about bringing him in? But we're not going to talk about what we're here to talk about. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about more things that
just to give you
we know.
Mr. Patel's take.
Hey, Alex, can you get rid of the guy putting all the clowns on there?
Yeah, give me just a second.
Everything we could see, the crowd at the Capitol was unarmed or armed only with non-lethal objects.
How do I do that?
Flagpoles or bikes.
You just click on his name.
Objects like Mr. Patel has also peddled.
Oh, it won't let me because we're in live together.
Oh.
Click on his name and you can say block or mute.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, but it didn't show that for me.
COVID-19 vaccine.
The 3 little dots next to his name.
Oh.
During my time on this committee,
I
was fortunate to get to know and work with former FBI Director Bob Mueller. I met him a few days after 9/11. That's when he took over the FBI. I trusted him. I worked with him. I did everything I could to help him because I believed that the FBI was the critical central agency in restoring America's confidence that we were safe. Bob Mueller was an extraordinary man. Oh, he was a Republican. Make no bones about it. He said it, admitted it. I knew it. He came from the San Francisco area. And when he was in college and graduated, a friend of his a year ahead of him had enlisted in the Marine Corps and was killed in Vietnam. Bob was inspired to do the same thing, join up in the Marine Corps, and he did. And he was a first lieutenant in Vietnam. He received a Bronze Star with a Valor Pin, and he also received Purple Heart. He was injured in battle. I read about his experience because after he was healed from that wound to his leg, he returned to combat. He was just that kind of fella. Regardless of party, he was a real American. He was a longtime federal prosecutor, U.S. attorney, the head of the DOJ's criminal division, and acting deputy attorney general before he became head of the FBI. After 9/11, I worked with him, and we had a good relationship, a professional relationship. We didn't always see eye to eye, but I respected him so much for what he had given to this country. In this book, Mr. Patel calls Director Bob Mueller, quote, a swamp creature. With all due respect, Mr. Patel, I've not worn the uniform of this country, and neither of you. To think that you would denigrate Bob Mueller's service to our country and call him a swamp creature is an indication of the depths your political views take you. The FBI plays a critical role in keeping America safe from terrorism, violent crime, and other threats. Our nation needs an FBI director who understands the gravity of this mission and is ready on day one. Not someone who is consumed by his own personal...
Alex, am I able to add to the chat?
The American people deserve...
Say that again.
Can I do something? Can I put something in the chat?
Terrorism,
Absolutely.
How do I do that?
Just click in the chat box and type what you need to type, and then hit the send button.
Mr. Patel.
You're on your iPad, so down at the bottom, the little bar that's open where you can type.
Thank you.
Yeah, there isn't
Senator
one.
Logan. Before I call on Senator Tillis, I want to clear up something the way I see it, and I think I'm going to invite everybody that it can be cleared up. This business about what Mr. Patel said about cowards in uniform, it's a mischaracterization of what he actually said. So I'm going to invite you to listen to the interview Mr. Patel gave that linked to his post to hear what he actually said. When he said cowards in uniform, he was talking about senior Pentagon leadership failing to mobilize the National Guard to protect the Capitol. His comments had nothing to do with police. Mr. Patel made his comments while discussing an article in the New York Times exposing grave miscommunication between the Department of Defense and the D.C. National Guard. So I would encourage people to follow up on that. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's my honor to introduce Kash Patel, President Trump's nominee to be FBI Director. I've completed due diligence on his life and career, and I'm convinced that Kash possesses significant expertise, ironclad commitment to justice, and he's an outstanding choice to lead the FBI. Kash's parents are Indian immigrants of Gujarati ancestry. They're up here at the front row. The Gujarat state is a melting pot of religions, including Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, with temples, mosques, and other religious sites scattered across the state. His father was raised in Uganda, but his family had to flee the country to escape repression under Idi Amin. His mother was born in Tanzania. They met and married in India and ultimately made their way to New York City by way of Canada, where his parents, along with 7 brothers and sisters and their spouses and at least a half a dozen kids, lived under the same roof. His parents raised Kash in the Hindu faith, and they instilled in him the values of hard work and education. Kash is a devout Hindu, and consistent with his faith, he's shown respect to people of all faiths. Cash attended the University of Richmond, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice and history. He went to Pace University School of Law, where he earned his JD and an international law certificate from the University College of London, Faculty of Laws. Cash began his career as a public defender in Florida, where he led or co-led more than 60 jury trials in state and federal court. Cash clearly demonstrated a devotion to upholding the rule of law and defending the rights of individuals. Cash led the defense of Jose Buitrago in United States versus Buitrago, a high-profile case in Florida in 2015. Buitrago was one of the Colombian nationals arrested in a major drug bust involving Operation Backrim. Cash and his co-counsel successfully argued that key evidence was withheld by the prosecution, leading to Buitrago's release. I suspect some of Cash's disdain for prosecutorial misconduct stemmed from this experience. Cash was hired as a senior counsel on the House Permanent Select
Welcome in, Rick.
on Intelligence Committee, I should say. And
You guys tap the screen for myself and my co-host, Sam. If you're not following Sam, do so. He does a daily dispatch to give you all your news tidbits in about 5 minutes.
He said in Trey's dialect, Cash, Congress is where righteous investigations go to die. I hope you're ready. I think Cash was ready, and he went on to establish a solid reputation for pursuing the facts, and from there, he held senior posts at the NSC, the Department of Defense, and the DNI. Since leaving the administration in 2020, Cash has written articles and books on national
Thanks for the follow, Pretty. Appreciate it.
Through his work as an author, Cash continues to advocate for justice and transparency, and to be ever vigilant in defending our great democracy.
Welcome in, USMC 63. Hooah.
Colleagues, I created a Cash bingo card that I have available to any of my colleagues who would like it on the other side of the aisle. Some may view this as an unserious caricature and not appropriate for this committee. Sadly, I consider it a serious caricature of what I expect to be witnessed today. I think we'll have words like enemies list and deep state. I've already X'd out 4 boxes in the opening statements alone. The fact of the matter is, some people will be here to simply substantiate a false narrative. At worse, they may be just going through an unfounded litany of quotes and half-quotes and half-truths, some of which have already been dispelled by the chairman.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, in my 10 years in the Senate, I hope I've established a reputation for being fair, doing my homework, and taking tough positions that have been met with harsh criticism. Heck, I've even been censured by my entire state and 30 counties for taking tough positions. And I stand by those decisions today and my decision to support Cash Patel.
Finally,
when President Trump announced his intent to nominate Cash, I contacted Trey Gowdy and others who worked with Cash, and they gave me glowing recommendations. So I called Cash on December the 2nd, and I offered to help him with his nomination. Since then, we have spent hours together, in person and on the phone.
Thanks, Bear. Welcome in, Robert.
And I've urged him to reach out to members across the aisle. In fact, Cash Patel has met with 60 members of the U.S. Senate. Every member except the last 3 who were sworn in, and the majority of the members on the other side of the dais in this committee and members off the committee. Chair Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, friends and colleagues on the committee, I've completed my due diligence of Cash Patel, and I am honored to provide my strongest recommendation for his confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that introduction. Before I swear you,
thank you, Franny.
I wanted to make
Thank
clear
you,
that
for sure.
before you give your statement, if you you want to introduce family and friends in the audience, you're welcome to do that. Would you please stand? Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Let's go, Cash.
Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I must start with a word of prayer for the tragic accident that befell our nation last night, where we lost civilians and service members. I pray for their families. I pray for law enforcement and military personnel, and I pray for their souls, and hopefully God will find them peace in the near future. I'd like to welcome my father, Pramod, and my mother, Anjana, who are sitting here today. They traveled here to get here from India. My sister's also here, Nisha. She also traversed the oceans just to be with me here today. It means the world that you guys are here. Jesse Krishna. I wouldn't be here today without their guidance, their unwavering support, and their relentless love. When President Trump informed me of his intention to nominate me as the director of the FBI, I was deeply honored. Sitting here today, I carry not only the dreams of my parents, but also the hopes of millions of Americans who stand for justice, fairness, and the rule of law.
Amen.
My commitment to these principles is deeply rooted in my family's history, which has profoundly shaped my worldview. My father fled Idi Amin's genocidal dictatorship in Uganda, where 300,000 men, women, and children were killed based on their ethnicity, just because they happen to look like me. My mother is originally from Tanzania. She studied in India, as did my dad, and they were married there. They would later emigrate to New York, as the senator pointed out, where I was born, and we were raised in a household of my father's 7 siblings, their spouses, and at least half a dozen children.
Oh, my goodness.
That's the only way we knew how to do things at the time, in the 70s and 80s, the Indian way. But we would soon learn the American way. These values have shaped and been the driving force of my career in 16 years of government service. Protecting the rights of the Constitution is of the utmost importance to me and has been every single time I've taken that oath of office. The recent terrorist attacks in New Orleans tragically claimed the lives of...
Welcome in, Tommy. Thank you.
And serve as a stark reminder that our national security is at threat, both internally and externally. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice, where I serve, play a pivotal role in securing our freedom and our safety for American citizens. If confirmed as the next FBI director, I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission. That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so.
Thank you.
Never make a prosecutorial decision that is solely the providence of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. For the first 8 years after law school, I served as a public defender, first for Miami-Dade County and later for the Southern District of Florida. During that time, I represented some pretty awful human beings, charged with some pretty heinous crimes. But what I learned there was the core value that has been enshrined in me since, that due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst, then there can be no due process for anyone, and our constitutional republic fails. But I battled on that hill for that due process. I would later serve in the Obama Justice Department as a terrorism prosecutor in the National Security Division, where we successfully contributed to the prosecution of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and others. I was honored to receive the 2017 Assistant Attorney General's Award from Loretta Lynch for my work in helping the Ugandans bring members of Al-Shabaab to justice for murdering 74 innocent people, including an American. I would also receive the Human Intelligence Award from the intelligence community for related work on that mission. My experiences at the National Security Division and would later be followed by my experiences on the National Security Council as Senior Director for Counterterrorism, and later as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, responsible for the production, creation, and promulgation of the Presidential Daily Briefing, our nation's most sensitive classified information and secrets to protect our country. My time in the White House was preceded by my time right here in Congress as a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, where I spearheaded the investigation that exposed serious FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses by members of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That misconduct eroded the public trust in our FBI. The erosion of trust, as Chairman Grassley pointed out, is all too low today. 40% of Americans have trust in the FBI. In order to get it back, there's a twofold track, Senator. One, violent crime is exploding in this country, and we cannot afford them to allow it to run away. We must tackle violent crime. Just in 2023 alone, there was 100,000 rapes, 100,000 drug overdoses, and 17,000 homicides. The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. The way we do this, we let good cops be cops. We let law enforcement, and we provide them with the tools necessary and resources they need to get after violent crime. The second way we do this on equal track is aggressive constitutional oversight from Congress. The public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to
100%.
transparency.
100%.
Members of Congress have unfortunately submitted hundreds of questions that have been unanswered by the FBI in recent times. That will not occur if I am confirmed. All appropriate requests for information will be responded to expeditiously and fully. I'm committed to working alongside the dedicated men and women of the FBI. They are warriors of justice, and I will always have their backs because they have the backs of the American people. I look forward to answering your questions, and I want to take a moment to thank my family, my friends, people who traveled here, and my entire team that has made this day possible. God bless America, and I look forward to your questions.
Let's go. Let's go. I don't think he's scared. I don't think he's scared at all.
7 minutes first round, is that right? 7 minutes for 3 minutes the second round. Mr. Patel, I'm not going to go through all the things that you've done through your career because I said those in my opening statements, but Democrats on the committee say you don't have experience. What are you most proud of from your career in public service?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the question. It's really humbling to be afforded the opportunity to have served this country for 16 years. But I think what I'm most proud of is my work in national security, protecting the no-fail mission, returning American hostages, killing high-value terrorists that brought hate and destruction to our shores. I've served that mission in Democratic and Republican administrations, and it is the one mission that we cannot fail, and it is the one mission where the FBI must play a critical role.
Okay. As you well know, and you and I discussed this in my office, whistleblowers are critical to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. Their courage to come forward and make legally protected disclosures about government wrongdoing benefits the country. I think they're politically, they are good American citizens, just want the government to do what it's supposed to do. I think they're treated by bureaucracies, not just in the FBI, but throughout the bureaucracy, like skunks at a picnic. Will you protect whistleblowers from retaliation, unlike former Director Wray, and promote a culture at the FBI that values whistleblowers' important contributions?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I share in your beliefs about the importance of whistleblowers.
So we've spent a lot of taxpayers' money ruining whistleblowers. Will you commit to ensuring that no taxpayer money will be used to identify and retaliate against whistleblowers?
Senator, if I'm confirmed, it will not.
Okay. You and I have heard a lot of criticism about various statements about January 6th. You said, quote, those who broke actual laws should be prosecuted, end of quote. But you've also called out the partisan nature of prosecutions and compared how the Biden Justice Department treated January 6th offenders with how they ignored many other crimes. Those include crimes related to illegal immigration, as well as riots that took place around the country. So explain your position on January 6th of this committee, and how do you respond to critics who say that you're anti-law enforcement?
Mr. Chairman, I greatly appreciate the question, the opportunity to discuss that. If anyone wants to consider me as anti-law enforcement, then look at my 16 years in government service, whether I was trying 60 jury trials in state and federal court upholding the rights of the indigent and breathing life into constitutional due process, or later as a national security prosecutor, where I served this country and overseas, and later when I was a Joint Special Operations Command civilian embedded with SEAL Team 6 and Delta, chasing down some of the most high-value target terrorists there are on this earth and successfully achieving a mission end state. I have always respected law enforcement. I have taken that oath and will take that oath again, God willing, to be the next director of the FBI. As for January 6th, I have repeatedly, often, publicly, and privately said there can never be a tolerance for violence against law enforcement. And anyone that commits an act of violence against law enforcement must be investigated, prosecuted, and imprisoned. And on January 6th, I said the same thing about acts against law enforcement. The Capitol Police, who I have served with, and when I was Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, rushing to the aid of the members of this committee and your colleagues to provide the National Guard, was my top mission priority, not politics. And that is my love of this country, to protect our laws and our way of life. And it was no different. If there's any ever corruption, I have been the first to call it out. And I will continue to call out corruption in government service, because it is a privilege to serve this nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Outside of this committee, and some people on this committee have accused you of promoting the QAnon movement. My colleagues have already asked your future boss, Mr. Bondi, many questions about this. I think it's easy to see these attacks for what they are, guilt by association. Are you a follower or promoter of QAnon?
No, Senator. In fact, I have publicly, including in the interviews provided to this committee, rejected outright QAnon baseless conspiracy theories or any other baseless conspiracy theories. They must be addressed head on with the truth, and I will continue to do that. And I will always continue to support Americans who support law enforcement, our military, and want a secure border.
Over the past 4 years, the FBI and Justice Department have weaponized law enforcement towards partisan ends. This is affecting personally. You, along with even members of my staff, were the victims of FBI overreach when they secretly subpoenaed your records during the investigation into Crossfire Hurricane. Inspector General Horowitz of Justice Department was right to say actions like this have a quote unquote chilling effect on whistleblowers. How do you intend to make sure that this kind of misconduct never happens again?
Senator, this may be one of the scenarios that most uniquely qualifies me to take command at the FBI. Having been the victim of government overreach and a weaponized system of justice and law enforcement, I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. And as the Biden Inspector General determined, those activities by the FBI and DOJ were wholly improper and not predicated upon law and facts. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost, financially and personally. And most importantly, I will make sure that no American is subjected to death threats like I was, and subjected to moving their residences like I was, because of government overreach, because of leaks of information about my personal status. If confirmed as FBI director, Mr. Chairman, you have my commitment that no one in this country will feel that pain.
Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Here we go.
I woke up this morning to National Public Radio, and they had an item on there about what has happened to those who were given blanket clemency by President Trump. One of these individuals was a man named Matthew Huddle. Are you familiar with him?
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
Matthew Huddle.
If you could remind me, Senator.
Well, I was reminded again this morning. He's a man who's been found guilty of numerous crimes. The one described this morning was an outrageous situation where he beat his 3-year-old child to a point where the poor kid couldn't even sit down for a week. Mr. Huddle was one of the demonstrators who came to the Capitol on January 6th. He was incarcerated and charged with, and pled guilty to crimes that he had committed, violence against police officers. After he was released by President Trump, he returned to his home state of Indiana. A few days later, he was stopped on the road, pulled a gun on a policeman. The policeman, sheriff's deputy, turned and shot and killed him. This is not the only instance of a person who received President Trump's clemency.
Can we talk about Biden's pardons and the people he set free?
On the radio, 38 criminal convictions, 38. He'd been sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was released because of the president's unconditional clemency, which was given to him as well.
I'm with you. USMC says can't wait to see Durbin in handcuffs.
6 defendants.
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on
100%,
the
Ashley.
power of the presidential pardon is just that, president.
Well, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th, and I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Senator, I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered 2 FBI agents, Agent Kohlers and Williams, the man that point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them, released from prison. So it goes both ways.
That's right.
Volunteer was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old and he was sentenced to home confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
That's true, he did. And he went to prison for it and should have. My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000.
More of the people that were incarcerated have still yet to even have charges brought up against them than the ones that were charged. Just throwing that out there.
Drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we don't have 50 homicides in a day.
So you just won't answer the question.
I
don't think we're safer that Matthew Huddle was sent back to Indiana. I don't think we're safer with Peter Schwartz. I could go through a long list.
That's right. They were hostages. 100% USMC.
Members of this committee. Let me move to another topic if I can. Tell me about your J6 choir. What is that?
Well, it's not my choir. It's simply a recording that was utilized to raise funds for families in need of nonviolent offenders.
Who sings on this recording?
I don't know, Senator.
What did you have to do with it?
Simply to raise funds to assist families of nonviolent offenders whose kids needed college education payments and whose rent needed being paid.
My understanding is that the performers on this J6 choir were the rioters who are in prison.
I'm not aware of that, sir. I didn't have anything to do with the recording.
You weren't aware of who made the recording?
No, Senator.
That's interesting. Do you receive any money from selling copies of that music or that recording?
Absolutely not.
Okay. You do have a foundation, though, do you not?
I'm very proud of the Cash Foundation and the $1.3 million we've given to families in need across this country, including active duty service members, police officers, putting kids in college, and helping people in disaster relief areas rebuild their homes and their communities.
1&0 LLC, are you familiar with that?
Sorry?
1&0 LLC.
I believe, Senator, you're referring to the LLC that one of the individuals has his private business with.
Is it part of the Cash Foundation in any way?
Only in that one of the members of the board has that LLC for his outside business.
Andrew Hollis?
I believe that's his name, yes.
Yes. Do you know how much was paid to him from your charitable work?
Yes, like any other charity, we had to go out and fundraise, something I'm sure every member of this committee is familiar with. And we use digital marketing campaigns, and I believe we paid a digital marketing company through 1&0 $250,000 to raise $500,000, which we gave away to families in need, like when hurricanes struck Florida, Texas, and North Carolina.
We will be going through the details of your foundation and the expenditures with the questions for record that the chairman has mentioned.
I look forward to
a chance to answer those under oath. Mr. Patel, you frequently associated with and sometimes praised extremist figures with well-documented histories of racism, anti-Semitism, conspiracies, and the like. In September of 2023, you appeared with Laura Loomer at an event promoting your book, this one here. You shared a photo of yourself and Loomer in which you held her book and she held yours. Just a few months before this event, Ms. Loomer posted on X that the September 11 terrorist attacks were, quote, an inside joke.
Okay, Ashley, thanks.
Around that time, she accused Florida's First Lady.
Yeah, let's go through your records, Mr. Durbin.
Exaggerating her cancer diagnosis to gain voter sympathy. A number of my Republican colleagues on this committee have criticized Ms. Loomer's extremism. One of my colleagues described her as a, quote, crazy conspiracy theorist who regularly utters disgusting garbage. Another called her really toxic. Given all this, why did you associate with Ms. Loomer?
Senator, as you can see, I took a photograph with an individual who showed up at a book event. I don't believe I'm guilty by association, and I certainly don't believe that an individual who is the first minority to serve as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for this country is a racist in any way, and I detest any conjecture to the contrary.
Attaboy.
With Stu Peters, does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi. There are more. Ted Nugent, it goes on, list goes on. Individuals. Why are so many of them in this category?
According to who?
My
You?
association, as you loosely define it, is by appearing in media over 1,000 times to take on people who are putting on conspiratorial theories and to devour them of their false impressions and to talk to them about the truth. That is something that I will always continue to fight for, Senator.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. We'll eventually talk about the FBI. That's the job you're up here for, right?
Wow.
Have you ever been subject to...
Alex, you're a little loud. You might want to turn it down a little bit.
Individual.
Before
Say again, Sam?
You're a little loud. You might want to turn it down a little bit.
Let's get into a few of them. Tell me about it.
Well, if you look at the record from January 6th, where I testified
Is that better?
before that committee, because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat, I was called a detestable, and I'll apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sand nigger who had no right being in this country.
Who?
You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home.
Sorry, TikTok.
That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
Okay. Growing up, were you subject to racism?
Yes, sir.
Now, I think the reason you're here has a lot to do with your work on Crossfire Hurricane. Are you familiar with that FBI operation?
I am, Senator.
So Senator Durbin mentioned the church report and the history of abuse, but he failed to mention Crossfire Hurricane.
How
He failed to
convenient.
mention the Horowitz report.
How convenient.
Wonder why. If you're waiting for these guys over here to figure that out, you're going to die waiting. So this is the Nunes memo. You work for Mr. Nunes over on the
Sorry?
House side. David Nunes.
Sorry?
Are you familiar with this memo by the Foreign Intelligence Service Act abuses
Yes,
the Department of Justice?
absolutely.
Did you help write this memo?
I did as a staffer.
Okay, I'll put this in the record.
Thank you.
In this memo, you kind of dissected the abuses of Crossfire Hurricane, right?
I did, Senator.
And the Mueller investigation. So the Crossfire Hurricane investigators, two of them were Strzok and Page. Are you familiar with them?
I am, Senator.
Okay. It was opened up on July the 31st, 2016. And here's what Strzok said. And damn, this feels momentous because this matters. The other one did too. But that was to ensure we didn't F something up. This matters because this matters. So super glad to be on this voyage with you. That's to Page. And Page responds a couple of months later. He's not ever going to be President, right? Talking about Trump. Strzok, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Is it fair to say that the people in charge of investigating Crossfire Hurricane hated Trump's guts?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. That statement, along with the statements from the sources.
Are those days over in the FBI, you hope?
Well, if they're not, they will be.
Okay. You know that the FBI secured warrants against him on 4 different occasions?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know that the information that they relied upon came from the Steele dossier?
I do.
Was it you that were able to find out that the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap?
Yes, Senator. We followed the money and we exposed the fraud that was.
And the primary subsource was Igor Danchenko, right?
That's correct, Senator.
And he was actually a Russian analyst.
That's right.
Are you aware that in January he told the FBI that, let's see, what did he tell the FBI? Steele had no proof to support the statements, that it was just talk. The primary subsource explained to the FBI that his information came from word of mouth and hearsay, conversations he had with friends over beers, and some of the information were statements he heard made in jest. And he told the FBI this in January.
That's right.
2017. And they got 2 more warrants after that.
That's correct.
Are you aware that the FBI had volumes of information that the Steele dossier was a bunch of bullshit and nobody ever told anybody at the top?
I am, sir. We exposed.
Or they lied about being told.
That's correct.
So are you aware of the fact that the FISA court rebuked the FBI? Are you aware of the fact that an FBI lawyer went to jail because he misled the court by manipulating a email from the CIA?
I am.
Do you believe that Crossfire Hurricane was one of the most disgusting episodes in FBI history of a corrupt investigation led by corrupt people who wanted to take Donald Trump down?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that's why you're in this chair today, to fix that?
I think that's a big.
Without Crossfire Hurricane, this guy wouldn't be here. And my friends on the other side
Hate that.
like pulling teeth. The Horowitz investigation, the Inspector General labeled this fraudulent at its core, mismanaged at its core, running
Hey,
stop
Teresa,
signs.
welcome in.
At every turn, they went forward when they should have stopped. The Durham report said it was obviously politically motivated. FBI agents were telling anybody and everybody that would listen, this is not reliable, this is not trustworthy, but they plowed on. And because of you and Trey Gowdy and others, we now know about this.
And Clinton paid for it.
Everybody who signed the warrant under questioning by me said if they knew then what they know now, they wouldn't sign the warrant. Comey said that. Yates said that. Rosenstein said that. The reason you're here is because most of the public, almost every Republican, believes that the FBI has been used continuously in a political fashion, ignoring evidence, making up evidence, lying to get Donald Trump. And when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they told every social media outlet in October 2020, oh, that's Russian disinformation. That was BS too. Right before the election, the FBI intervened to shut reporting on the Hunter laptop down as being Russian misinformation, according to Zuckerberg.
And that's criminal.
You promised all of us those days are over at the FBI.
Yes, Senator, they are.
Are you proud of what you did to find all that?
Absolutely.
You think that's why you're here today, is to make sure that never happens again?
The American people deserve just that.
Thank you.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Patel. I remember January 6th.
Here we go.
Running through our halls to flee the mob, colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot, us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us, said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe, even absurd. Your former colleague J.D. Vance said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons would, and I quote, focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. Well, Trump pardoned all of them. And there's a lesson.
That's not true.
Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee together to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters.
Did he just describe Biden, or is it just me?
Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, this nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, end quote. And we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her.
That's right, USMC.
John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said,
their piggy bank's drying up.
He was qualified. I was forced to hire him. Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, his ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his application of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, "The manhunt starts tomorrow," and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Yep.
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, "beyond a reasonable doubt." Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An inspector of investigation found that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness. And the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices.
Tap the screen.
Conduct shows character.
Share the live.
And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authoritarian regimes becoming the tools of political power. The characteristics that they often show are that they are vengeful, that they are grandiose, that they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings. And I yield my 1 second.
Let's talk about your history, Mr. Whitehouse.
You said you'd like to explain something. I forget the point he made. You can do that now if you want to.
Simply this, Senator. In the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service is an exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Before I call on Senator Carney, I'd like to say that we've heard about the January 6th pardons, I think it's important that we remind people at the same time of some pardons by the previous administration. Thomas Sanders, a kidnapper who murdered a 12-year-old girl named Lexus and her mother, Sue Ellen Roberts. Adrian Peeler, a Canadian drug kingpin who was convicted in the death of an 8-year-old boy and his mother. Leonard Peltier, that's already been referred to, that murdered 2 FBI agents, and even Director Wray, at that time, former Director Wray, said that shouldn't have happened, and Judge Michael Conahan, who took kickbacks for wrongly sending juveniles for profit detention centers, and Alex Saab, who laundered illicit proceeds for narcotics terrorists, Nicholas Madero, and was a key connection between Venezuela and Iran, and 5 family members of his own family. President Biden did that, Senator.
Welcome, Mr. Patel. Do you believe America is an exceptional nation?
It's the greatest nation.
Amen.
Your family went through a lot to get here,
They sure did.
and your life story is, I think, a great example of people pursuing the American dream. Do you believe what a large part of what makes America an exceptional nation is the rule of law?
It is one of the fundamental precepts that determines that.
And why is that?
Because without a singular application of a rule of law, we go back to the Uganda that my father fled in Idi Amin.
I believe that the 2 most important institutions in America to preserve and protect and enforce the rule of law are the FBI and the Department of Justice. And the sort of politicalization that Senator Graham and others have already talked about during the Crossfire Hurricane investigation or project of James Comey at the FBI, and the abuse of intelligence tools like Title I of Section 702 are a betrayal of American values and adherence to the rule of law. And I think your biggest task is going to be, along with Pam Bondi at the Office of the Attorney General, is to restore the rule of law to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Without regard to partisan affiliation or politics?
Absolutely.
Do you believe President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, needs access to all of the lawfully available intelligence that can be collected by the American intelligence community in order to inform him so that he can make good judgments as commander-in-chief to assure the safety and security of the American people?
Having been responsible for the collection and predication and promulgation of that intelligence, I firmly believe he and every president must have it.
And you would not support any impractical or perhaps immaterial or unworkable ways to inhibit the flow of that information to President Trump?
No, I would not.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is the most important law that most Americans have never heard of. But when I was questioning my fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this, we talked about some of the reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years. This has been an ongoing conversation here in Congress. People like my colleague here, Senator Lee, and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a long way to help protect the privacy rights of American citizens. But let me just point out some of the improvements that have been made over the years. This is not the same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first term. These are a number of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out. But one of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants as a public defender. You understand that what probable cause is required, what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge in order to get a warrant. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past. And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens. Dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages, having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not comportive with the requirement to protect American citizenry. I'm all open to working with Congress on finding a better way forward. But right now, these improvements that you've made go a long way.
Well, and Director Ratcliffe said that he did not believe that, given the context of 702 collection, whether a foreign target communicates with a U.S. person, that there'd be sufficient evidence to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or any other court to demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, just in real time, Senator, excuse me, it's almost impossible to make that function and serve the national no-fail mission.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you point out the lack of trust. Any of these tools can be abused by people who are willing to break the law or abuse these tools or violate the public trust. Director Ratcliffe again used, I thought, a helpful analogy. I'll see if you agree with it. He said the knives in your kitchen have a very useful and beneficial purpose, but they too can be misused. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
And similarly, do you agree that tools like Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act can be used appropriately to protect national security, but they can also be abused by people who are willing to cross a line they should not cross?
They're both true, and that's why we need to work together to make sure Americans have trust again in these surveillance measures that we utilize to protect our country.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the men and women of the FBI, their mission, fidelity, bravery, integrity. I believe they deserve a director who respects their work and sacrifices, and they deserve a director who's focused on their mission. This is not about bingo cards or games. This is not about revenge.
So
this is about the safety of our
Sam,
country.
right now, currently, RFK confirmation hearing is also going on, as well as Tulsi Gabbard. Do we want to stay on Cash Patel? Do we want to hop around a little bit?
Yeah, let's hop around a little bit. That'd be a good idea.
Let's hop around a little bit.
And every other election in between was rigged by our government because.
Let's. Which would you prefer, sir, Mr. RFK? You want to check in on Tulsi?
Let's check in on Tulsi.
I'm with you. Well, maybe.
I thought it was supposed to be private, but apparently not.
No, sir. Here we go.
Adobe Acrobat at AI Assistant. I'm creating a business of acting.
Audio okay? Can you hear it?
Others.
Yeah.
Manual
Okay.
of this.
My mic's not too hot.
Maybe a year with AI Assistant. I can finish it in 4 to 6 weeks.
Hey, everybody, if you're not following Sam, go over and follow Sam. Click the like button and share, guys. It gets us out to more people.
Yes, and I believe we have the legal structure in place for those who have concerns to address them.
As you know, there has been speculation in the press that you met with Hezbollah, a terrorist organization affiliated with Iran. Have you ever knowingly met with any members, leaders, or affiliates of Hezbollah?
No, and it is an absurd accusation.
Let me ask you one final question in the short time we have left. With Hamas, ISIS-K, the Houthis, all the Iranian proxies in Syria and Iraq.
Where are they doing these from? I thought they would both be at the same place.
General resurgences in the Middle East.
It's the Senate, so I'm assuming there's multiple chambers.
I'm alarmed at the lack of focus by the IC on this threat to our safety. We don't want to have to call you back to this room after a terrorist attack and ask, how did the IC
I'm sorry.
miss
I'm going to end the stream on
great
Restream.
power competition
Okay.